I'm meeting with Dr. Chuck Diviney of CLD3 Counseling, and we're very happy to have him with us today because he has a very diverse background, a very broad range of experience, and so we're excited to talk about the intersection of law and mental health in the family law setting. But before we talk about that, I want to give you an idea of just how deep and broad an experience he brings to this conversation. So would you give us a little bit of a quick biography of how you came to be where you are today? And it's interesting because his experiences really should give you a great deal of confidence that he knows what he's talking about.
I appreciate that. So before I actually even chose to go into the field of psychology, I was planning to degree in pre-med. In high school, I was taking the calculus and biology and chemistry. When I started attending classes at Westminster, I was definitely highly interested, based on a few of my professors and their experiences in the field of psychology. And that's when I bachelor degree in 1994 in psychology and French. I also returned to school in 1998 and obtained my Master's of Mental Health Counseling degree in 2001, and then returned to the doctoral schooling in 2008, graduating in 2014 with a Doctoral of Counseling Studies. My background is varied and diverse. I started as a tutor at Westminster College in statistics, math, and French, working there from about 1990 through 1994. I also worked as an officer of the court with the juvenile court system, 3rd District Juvenile Court, and also Charter Canyon and Psychological Associates, where I completed my interning at Westminster in 1994. In 1995, I obtained work and employment with Valley Mental Health, where I worked with short-term substance abuse with adolescents, and then transferred to working with adolescents with sex offender history in a secure unit, where I worked for about 8 years. As well as during that time, I worked in hospice, home health, social services at a care center, and then began my career at Division of Child and Family Services, where I worked in child protective services, family preservation, and statewide training. It was during my time at DCFS that I certified in domestic violence, and ever since have remained specialized, which is one of my primary areas of focus in treatment as well as education. I then transferred over to the Division of Aging and Adult Services in 2005, where I worked as the Public Information Officer, educating citizens, not only statewide, but also involved in national organizations, promoting awareness of elder abuse and abuse of vulnerable adults, as well as domestic violence. During also that time at Aging Services and DCFS, I also began work actually with private therapy, private counseling, where I worked with adult parole and probation, their clients, court-ordered clients, as well as voluntary clients, ranging from issues, mood disorders, trauma, grief and loss, bereavement. In 2008, I opened up my own agency, CLD3 Counseling, and have been CEO since that time. During my time here at CLD3 Counseling, I also acquisitioned the position as clinical director at Salt Lake County Jail, and worked there for 2.5 years, assisting me with my dissertation and also garnering additional experience.
See, so this is a real treat to be talking with Dr. Diviney today. So we talked before we went on camera that, and this was weeks ago as well as today, that in my career as a divorce and family law attorney, up until just a few years ago, I always saw everything as the nail and I was the hammer, and since, in any situation like that, you tend to look at problems as what can I do with my expertise and my background and skills to solve this. And so for many years I always thought, well, is there a legal solution or is there a legal response? And there almost always is, because law is always expanding into every aspect of our lives. But I noticed that just because I could do something, or just because any lawyer or something like that might be able to ask for relief or a court order or something like that, doesn't necessarily mean one should, and certainly doesn't mean that it's the most effective response.
Sure.
And so I was telling Dr. Diviney that, I kind of stumbled into this because I would talk to people who were really frustrated with whatever situation they were, between me as their lawyer and them and their legal problems, and the problems they had in their family with an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse or with children. And I just kind of I should have noticed this, but didn't. And a client or two would say, my neighbor, or a bishop or minister or something like that is a psychologist or a social worker or a counselor, and I've taken my kids to them, and it's really helped. And so then I went to counseling or something like that, and I said, hey, I'm beginning to see that there's only so much that the system can do, only so much the system's willing to do, unfortunately, in many instances, and that there are other avenues not only people can, but should take. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, I like what you said. I mean, I get clients that come in to my office, and of course, people will present their stories and their histories and their current situation, and of course, I can address many things. However, the purpose of therapy is to, first of all, go where the client is. The client's going to come in and say, hey, I'm having a problem. I'm going through a divorce. It hurts. It's traumatic. I'm angry. There's drugs. There's violence. There's cheating, whatever that has happened. Or we just have separated because we no longer fit together. So, and that hurts for both parties. So, people can come into my office and they tell me that story, and then I do some digging, and there's a ton of things. But really, the purpose of therapy is to focus on the particular issue that the client presents.
Right, and so let me give you an example.
Yeah.
I've got an ex, or I've got a spouse who is sending me dozens of text messages a day.
Okay.
And or just really irritating emails or phone calls and leaving messages.
Right.
And, maybe I can put the lawyer hat on. I can go get you a civil stalking injunction or a protective order or restraining order. All right, you talked about how that's not terribly effective, but even if that happens to work, your problem isn't so much a legal problem.
Right.
So what would you tell somebody in a situation like that where they come in and say, I'm frustrated and angry, and they say, or they think, I just need these text messages and phone calls to go away. What would your response to
Well, and I've had this case before. I've had it several times, actually. And I first of all, I'm going to validate that's very frustrating, to get constant messages. The first thing I'm going to ask is, have you set the boundaries? What are your boundaries? Have you clarified what I don't send me any texts anymore. If you send this again, I'm calling the police. If you do this again, I'm going to get a stalking order. But I would also take a look at, are there other alternatives? Because getting a stalking injunction or accessing an attorney is going to cost a lot of money and a lot of time in court and a lot of stress. Court is not a pretty place. I've never had fun at court.
We know the joke about people will say, it's like, hey, stop. I've got a protective order.
Yeah.
Those bullets,
piece of paper.
Yeah, those bullets are powerless against this piece of paper.
Not
so in other words, there's only so much that can be
Yeah.
done, and you may put your faith in the system. And again, I'm not here to criticize, but
No.
Law enforcement's stretched to its limits.
Mhm.
You call up and it'll be a low priority. Courts, same thing. They might be going, well, unless it's life-threatening, I'm not so sure I should be taking drastic steps.
Right. And I would agree with that. I mean, it is only a piece of paper. I think it's helpful because it creates a track record. I think it creates a pattern of behavior. And in some cases, it does get very serious to the point where we have had deaths. I mean, and I think that's critical for people to understand that they are there for protection, but they are only there for protection in a legal sense and establishing, like I said, a pattern of behavior to prove in court. When I look at protective orders or someone who's text messaging or harassing or stalking, when I look at that, there are a number of other services, resources that are available out there. One of the first things I'm going to do is an assessment, an evaluation with a client to determine what is the severity of this case, the risk of danger. Are there other factors? Are children involved? Is this interrupting life functioning, daily functioning? Are you able to go to work? Are you able to hang out with your friends? Or is there a threat level here, a risk of danger and a risk of harm? If I determine that there's a higher risk of harm, we're going to definitely go into safety planning. We're going to talk about resources. We're going to talk about other avenues, possibly relocation, services that are available, crime victim reparations funding, if there has been a violent incident, a police report, if you will. I'm also going to look at services. Do we need additional services in here, such as maybe Medicaid or vocational rehabilitation? Do we have to get work going? Would a protective order be suitable here? What level is the harassment really?
Let's assume then that it's just really irritating.
It's just irritating text messages.
And it is, and I don't want to minimize. I can't sleep some nights.
Right.
Sometimes it's just whatever he or she said or wrote just makes me angry. It may not be a threat.
Right.
It may just be a comment about my parenting, a comment about my worth.
Sure.
Something like that. Or I'm just angry all the time.
Sure.
So I'm not tossing and turning in bed, but I go to work and I snap at everybody, and I know that it's because I'm under so much strain.
Sure.
So I'm concerned that the police or the courts may not be very sympathetic, or that they might say, actually we're really sympathetic, but our hands are tied.
Sure.
So it's and again, this is what I learned is sometimes I could see how frustrated people were, and it's like, I can take your money, I can do stuff, but I don't know if it will solve your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized there's a lot. Not everything.
No.
Mental health counseling and help is not a panacea, but there's so much that can be done. And it's more effective in so many ways. It's a lot less expensive, and it's not persistent. So, assuming that you've got somebody, and we'll talk about several different topics, but you just got somebody who's bothering you a lot. And your lawyer, if he or she is honest, is saying, look, I'm not going to take your money. You'd just be wasting it.
Right.
But go talk to Dr. Diviney or someone in his position. What's someone like you going to tell them? How are you going to help them?
Well, again, we start off with an assessment, evaluation. Always does, that's a priority. I would also say that, I'm looking at this, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but grief and loss. We have decades of research on grief and loss, starting with Kubler-Ross in 1969. We've got denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
We've all heard that.
We've all heard those. Those are pop culture now. But when I go through a divorce, a lot of people associate those stages of grief and loss with death.
Because that's what the original
study was on. But now we've had a ton of studies on, job loss, losing your home, getting a new job and having to leave the old job. Divorce is a big one, and so in this case we've got a divorce that's gone on, and they're still contacting. They're not really threatening or anything, as you said, but it's keeping you up at night because they say something like, I love you and I miss you, and then that freaks you out.
I love you, I miss you, I hate you.
I hate you. You are the cause of all of my life's disaster.
You're a bad parent. You're a bad daughter or husband or son.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to say, those sound like normal human responses, although they're not functional and not healthy. They are fairly normal. They're what we would expect one to do when they're hurting, when they're dealing with loss.
But are the effects of a divorce the same as grieving the loss of a deceased family member? They're not, right?
There's going to be differences, but they look similar. I mean, you're going to go through this denial, like. In death, you're going to say, "Oh, my grandma died, and that's sad." But you may even still think she's going to show up at the picnic next year. The same thing with the divorce. "Oh, I've gotten a divorce. Oh, but you know what? We're going to get back together." That's denial. That's the same kind of thing. Is it a little different? Yeah, the divorced partner is still alive. So, I would say, grandma's not coming back. That's going to be a different aspect that we have to deal with in counseling. But the grief and loss stages are very similar, and the emotions that are evoked during a divorce, the thought patterns, the behaviors, those are all things that we're going to take a look at, and we're all impacted by these traumas and losses.
So when I go and say, hey, look, I want, I've come to you, it's like, look, I talked to my lawyer, and he or she wasn't very supportive, actually, because I said I wanted a restraining order against these occasional emails that are critical of me. Mm-hmm. And the attorney or the court kind of was like, no, we're not taking it as seriously as you are. Mm-hmm. That's got to hurt. What can someone do? Does that person just have to lump it at that point?
No, I think you have to understand. I mean, I would definitely say, okay, that's an option. Restraining order is an option. So is dropping, a nuclear bomb or seeking out asteroids. Those are all possibilities.
They are possibilities,
but
not terribly realistic.
Not terribly realistic. Not necessarily achievable. And I also have to look at what's my intention here? Am I hurting? Are they hurting me? Am I holding on to something? Usually if someone's got this elaborate, expansive response that they want to carry through, like taking them to court, I also have to look at, are you dealing with your own issues? Have you, is this pain that you're not dealing with? Is this get revenge. You're going to make them pay or whatever.
And listen closely, because this is a painful thing to confront.
It's huge.
Many of you watching this are like, no, they're in denial. No,
Yeah.
no, it's not that. I know, but quite often you've got your own issues. Now, they may have been caused by or aggravated by your ex.
Someone else.
Someone else.
Usually are.
But that person's not going to solve it for two reasons. That person may be incapable, and that person doesn't care.
Doesn't care.
Yeah.
And they want you to suffer. So, I mean, if there's anything you hate text messages, of course, they're gonna want to stir this up. I worked with Dr. Albert Ellis. He's the theorist with rational emotive behavioral theory. And I love what he used to say when he was alive. When I practiced with him, he would say that, you've got this order of self-control, and this is me controlling my thoughts, which ultimately controls my emotions and behaviors. When someone comes in and presents this trigger, and they say, oh, I'm going to send you these text messages that say, I hate you, you're responsible for the world's demise, you're the worst person in the world, then I get a chance, a brief moment, snapshot, to determine whether I'm going to give into that and hand my control over to that person, or stop and determine what is my course of action, what do I want to do with this. And a lot of people would probably save themselves a lot of grief, a lot of time, a lot of money, if they were able to say, you know what, I'm going to just set up a boundary here, block the number, and be done. In some of those cases, it's not that cut and dry. I mean, if you got kids and you've got to do visitation, it becomes a headache.
But isn't it nice to know? See, the point here of meeting with Dr. Diviney is to say, you can go to court and to the police only so often, where either they will not help, or whatever help they offer you doesn't end up solving the problem or mitigating the problem as you expected. There are some things where, even though you don't deserve this shabby treatment, nobody else can help you. Mm-hmm. You've got to figure out another way for your own sanity and for the sake of your kids, or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized at some point I don't have to try and help in every instance, because there's a better way of doing it.
Well, I would say most of us could handle, I think most of the issues that we're presented, we can handle. We call a friend, get some support, go out for a cup of coffee or a nice dinner or something. You can get the support that way. And part of therapy is identifying what is the range, I guess, of possible solutions here. I am definitely a strengths-based therapist, where I look at people's strengths. I look at what we've done in the past that's been successful, trying and re-implement some of those behaviors or approaches, if you will. I also look at, solution finding. What are all the possibilities here? This world has endless possibilities. So does each one of our problems.
Would you give me an example of a situation where somebody went through a child custody dispute or a divorce or something like that, and the other party, let's just assume, just to keep the parameters narrow, this person that you're dealing with is the good guy, wearing the white hat, has flaws, but isn't the one that had the substance abuse problem or any kind of mental health problem, no violence. But the other person on the other side did.
Right.
And this other person got away with a lot because the system couldn't catch it all.
Right.
This person was good at concealing. So, and then let me give you another example, if you have such. And if there's a better one, let me know.
No, this is a good one.
And this is one where the kids are being alienated. You can do it on a slow drip, or you can do it whatever you're...
Right.
This person came to you and said, I've been to court dozens of times. I have spent tens of thousands of dollars. And by the way, if you're thinking that this is, that's an unusual situation, it's not.
It's not.
And
I've had quite a few.
You can spend your $10,000 in court before you even realize it. Okay, so this person...
Before even getting to court.
Right, exactly.
So it happens
You can spend a lot of money and not even realize you did.
Yeah.
And then you kind of come to yourself and go, oh. And then, so this person is coming to you and saying, look, I've got to try something else. I don't know if it's your kind of help or not, but this is where I know that I've exceeded everything I can do there. My kids are starting to pull away from me, and it's not my fault. I'm a good person.
Yeah.
Not only do I want their love and affection, I also don't want them to turn into horrible people because of what my ex is doing to them.
Right.
You had a situation like that?
I mean, I've had similar. They range.
Right. So
they
give me one, or maybe like a combination of those, keep protecting names for the sake of the innocent.
Sure.
Where you've seen somebody saying, look, I looked to the legal system, I looked to law enforcement, I kind of came to you, not because I think it's such a great idea, but because I just was at my wit's end and thought, I got to try anything.
Sure.
And what happened? Give me some examples.
So I would start off with the serious cases. I mean, the serious cases that I've dealt with, I've gone to court and suggested in court, working with the attorney, and presenting to the court the severity of the past violence or the addiction. And a lot of times what ends up happening there is there's a referral for an assessment, supervised visitation until they get some services, things like that. Those are on the more serious side cases. Then there's the civil cases, solely civil, where there's no criminal. There's some behaviors, there's a lot of turmoil, conflict. Typically what I recommend, I mean, the kids that are pulling away, they're pulling away because that's their behavioral response is how they deal with emotions.
Well, that's all well and good, Dr. Diviney, but
how do I deal with that?
I was like, look, it's just breaking my heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I pick up the kids and they just want to go to their rooms and just
Sure.
play video games. The stuff they used to like to do with me,
they
claim that they never did and they hate it. And, it's like, what can I do?
So, there's going to be, I've worked with kids in that case, trying to get, to help them, if you will, and I don't want to say get, but help them to verbalize what's going on with them. But a lot of times this is also a response to the parent, that the parent might be pulling away because they're focused so intently on getting the X and going back to court, and there's a lot of things that are said and done that we think that the kids don't witness or don't know, and they do. And that hurts them because the conflict is between the two parents, not the kids and one parent or the other parent. It's the two parents that are having the conflict. The thing that I try and stress to all parents in a situation like this is you don't have to be friends, but you're still parents, and you have to figure out how best to co-parent. Again, we're talking about a case where maybe one parent is so dysfunctional or is dealing with such significant issues that they're not able to co-parent. And there's not much the court can do to help you either.
But the court won't believe me, and
Right.
I won't blame the court. I'm channeling the parent. I know the court might take what I say with a grain of salt, thinking that I have just as much animus toward my ex as he or she has with me.
Sure.
But the court's not believe. But hey, but then I come to you, and then let's assume that just you have like a truth detector that you can. And you believe me at the very least, right?
Right.
Like, look,
right.
You believe that. It's like, look, I don't want my ex to suffer. I don't want to keep fighting with my ex, but I have a fight on my hands because my kids are suffering. Number one, I'm suffering because I'm losing my kids, and that
Right.
hurts me.
Right.
For my selfish purposes, that hurts me.
Sure.
But my kids are turning into bad people. They're turning into weird people. They're turning into delinquents. They're turning into socially awkward people. Whatever it is, I can't stand it. And I have supervised visitation, and I have a few things here and there, whatever they might be. But it's not working. And you've scratched the surface there. Kids will talk to a therapist, and I've seen
Typically.
some miraculous.
Yeah.
When they do, when kids will, I've seen some miraculous. I've seen some kids that aren't helped by it, but more often than not, they will open up.
Sure.
They start to realize, people do understand me.
Sure.
Somebody's trying to understand me, and maybe mom and dad with the good intentions didn't, but a trained professional sees something.
Well, and kids don't want to talk to their parents about that kind of stuff, especially adolescents. They're going to blow parents off.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time. And it takes me 2 or 3 sessions a lot of times to break through that thick exterior.
And as you've done that, what have you done for the child, and what have you done for the innocent parent that is helping kind of, what I mean by innocent
I know what you
parent,
mean. I know what you mean.
Not perfectly
Referring back to our
innocent.
situation.
Yeah, not perfect, but not the person causing the trouble. All the things that they tried at the legal side of things that either got them only so far or failed.
Sure.
What is it that you see happen that couldn't be done at the court?
The court is not about emotions. I mean, there's no emotions in court. It's about, have the laws been violated, has a contract been violated, whatever, and so the emotional piece is the thing that with which we struggle, and that kids struggle and parents struggle, and therapy would be my recommended approach during any kind of divorce or legal proceedings like that everyone goes in and at least gets an assessment. Am I doing okay? Some divorces they flow quite nicely, but even then, years down the line, you might be like, gosh, I really miss this person, and I didn't really take care of this, or I didn't say what I wanted to say. Kids are the same way, and the kids get put in the middle they begin to think it's their fault. They tend to blame one parent or another parent or both parents. And then it just spirals from there.
Or they get parentified, where they find
the
themselves
oldest
taking
child gets parentified. Yeah, I've seen that a lot, where parents just kind of go into this depression, and so the oldest child is left to fend for the other kids, and they're resentful. I mean, you got a 14-year-old taking care of an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. They're resentful because they want to go out and play with their friends. They want to get involved in extracurricular activities at school, and they can't. They have to now cook dinner, wash clothes.
And they won't or they can't express that, or they may not even be aware of it themselves, and so they'll act in weird ways.
Yes,
that a parent will go and say, "Hey, that's out of line. You need," and
then they get pushed down even further.
Right.
That's out of line. You're crazy. You're bad. You mentioned those before. You're resistant and non-compliant and breaking the rules. And as we do that, we're labeling them, and the research says time and time again, these labels that are given, more times than not, we will live up to those labels. So whether we were before or not. So I mean, it's a process, and we alluded before too that sometimes therapy doesn't work for the kids. There's some things that I would look at there. First of all, not every therapist is meant for every client. I've had clients come in and they say, you're not going to work for me. And I don't take that personally. I don't want someone coming in, and sticking with me when they're not feeling it. It's kind of like friends.
Even though you may have the best of intentions and really want to help, it just might not be the right fit. It might be a personality thing. It might be a man-woman thing.
Could be a gender thing, an age thing, experiential. It could be any kind of cultural or diverse background.
So that's not your fault.
No, and it's not their fault either.
Nor is it the client or patient's fault. They need to find a good fit so they do feel like this.
Sure.
And that's something I've heard more and more with the number of interviews we do. It's like, hey, just because you went to one therapist or counselor,
don't leave it at that.
And didn't like it, give it, go talk. Go get a second or third opinion.
I have a magic number 3. Okay, magic number 3. You meet with someone, and you'll know right out. It's kind of like when you meet a friend, or talking about your future romance or something. When you meet someone, you just kind of know that it's going to work or it's not going to work. I tend to be careful of first impressions because a lot of we can be misguided by those. But usually in the first session, by the end of the first session, you're going to know if you feel comfortable enough. Or not with this person. And you're developing a relationship, and you have to realize the therapist is the person you go to and divulge all of your soul, your core. And if you are not comfortable with doing that, then therapy is not going to be progressional. It's not going to be useful or helpful. In a lot of cases, it can be detrimental. If I'm holding back something significant in therapy, that's like telling your doctor, I smoke. Telling your doctor that I smoke and I've got heart problems. Not that they wouldn't know, but it's similar to that. When I have a relationship with my doctor, with my care professional, I need to be able to tell them everything. And if I don't feel safe enough to do that, or I'm not liking them, or there's something about this relationship I'm not liking, then that's going to be detrimental.
And you're both better off parting ways.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to work with someone who isn't willing to tell you everything you need to help.
Because I'm going to sense that.
And one hand is tied behind your back.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I can't help.
Yeah.
So please go someplace where you feel more comfortable.
Well, unlike you don't want to waste their time. If this is about, irritating text messages, there's better ways and cheaper ways and quicker ways, I think, to deal with it. And you want to be of most benefit to your client, and the same thing for me. I don't want someone to come in and we've spent 3 or 4 weeks already, trying to navigate something where they don't feel safe enough with me to do so.
And so on that note, let's end, because I just realized that's what it all comes down to, is there are times when people come to me asking me to get other things to change. Things external to them. You get a change. You get something external to me. You get a judge, you get a police officer, you get something to change things. But sometimes you have to change yourself.
Change me.
Not because you're at fault.
No.
But because only by changing yourself, your way of dealing with it, are things going to get better. Because the external change either isn't enough or never happens.
Right, and the internal change is a necessary and expected process anyways. I mean, all of us, that's the one thing that stays the same is change.
Or you get a situation like Viktor Frankl and the happiness in the concentration camps.
Sure.
Nobody would have blamed him if he would have said, I don't deserve this, I choose to be miserable, I choose to feel like a victim.
Right.
but he actually changed, didn't have to change, but chose to change and make those changes for his own benefit.
Yes.
And so sometimes that is what happens. I'm not saying that you can't count on these externalities, but sometimes you have to change yourself, even if you don't deserve what's happening to you. You can only get better if you change and change it yourself.
And that's what I do have control over.
Yeah, that's what I do have control
Me.
over. Exactly.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We look forward to
You're
talking to
welcome.
you again about these other subjects that you
Yes.
talked about in the process, but we'll finish here today with that, and we hope you found that helpful.
Awesome. Thank you.